Start off with a little instrumental number there, heavily disguised. That was actually "Don't You Worry, Child," and I don't think we need to worry too much about this case. It's so high publicity. It is so important that whilst there may be some ups and downs, it may be a complete and utter roller coaster ride emotionally. Personally, I think that eventually we will get to the truth. There's too many people that are too committed to the truth that we're not going to get there. We certainly are, folks. We're definitely going to arrive at justice. Justice will eventually be served, and it probably won't be exactly what Robert Herman was hoping for. When I did my driving test, it was a fair few years ago, and I must confess I didn't pass first time. I felt I drove just as well the second time and passed, but failed the first time. It was years later that I discovered that there was a policy of making sure that not too many youngsters of my age, 17, were suddenly let loose on the road, and therefore of the 3 examiners that conducted the driving tests, there was in fact only one that would ever publish a pass, give you a pass. The other 2 could fail you on so many different things, and the third one could pass you on so many different things. It really was quite a lottery. It was all a matter of interpretation. Yeah, it's maybe not fair, it's maybe wrong. That was just the way that it works. Another thought that sprang to mind was a few years back I ordered a light bar for holding disco lights. When I went to the local music shop, they said yes, you can get basically a goalpost design, but they come in packs of 2, so I had to buy 2 of them. It was still worthwhile because I mean it was cheap. It was as cheap to buy the 2 as I thought it would be costing to get 1. The other accordionist in the band said, "Oh well, I'm at the high school and I run the dances at the high school. I'll get the high school to buy it off you, the other one." So I duly delivered it along with an invoice and a piece of paper, and he had to hand it over to the headmaster, and it was, as I say, my invoice for this lighting stand. And the member of the band was a physics teacher, and I put a wee note in with it that instructions, read carefully. If you have a degree in physics, read the instruction manual very carefully to ensure proper construction, and if you don't, just use common sense. We find, don't we, in this world that there are, for want of a better word, educated idiots. People that you know, they know things inside and out, but they know absolutely nothing. And that's how I would describe the judges that voted against Brendan. Yeah, okay, they used the letter of the law. Well, did they? As far as I'm concerned, they just abused it. They are clowns and they are cowards, and hopefully one day they will meet Brendan in person and have to explain their decisions to him. It makes me laugh when we hear that the sort of real decision was whether a reasonable court would have upheld Brendan's conviction or not. Well, I'm sorry folks, as far as I'm concerned, I have yet to see any kind of reasonable court in Wisconsin when it comes to Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey. They are totally unreasonable. And as I say, I really do think that, you know, when it comes to people like Brad Schimmel and Luke Berg, they are clearly educated idiots. And also, it's not what they know, it's who they know. They are obviously friendly with members of that panel, the 4 members, and the 4 members basically cowards. They wash their hands of it, and they've said, look, just pass it up to the Supreme Court, which is obviously where it's headed. They didn't, certainly in my eyes, they've never ever clarified the situation, which is that if somebody's going to make a confession, they come out and they tell a story and they give the information. It's not fed to them and then they simply answer yes or no. A confession is something that comes from the heart. It's heartfelt. It's a genuine, I'm sorry I did this. No, there was none of that in Brendan's case. Absolutely none of it. Even some of the staunchest guilters realise that, Brendan was completely and utterly taken in. Why? Because it was convenient taking him. As it's been pointed out, they failed to get anywhere with Jody, so what do? We get hold of the next person. Let's see if we can get something out of him. As I say, as far as I'm concerned, the 7th Circuit decision, completely wrong. They've abused the law. They've acted like the other examiners. They can come up with their own interpretation of it. They don't live in the real world. They don't. A lot of these guys, they start off at school. They then go to university. They do their law degree, and basically they're never ever exposed to the real world in any sort of sense that we would understand. They just live in their own little bubble, and as I say, they've just washed their hands of Brendan's case. Well, okay, as I say, I kind of knew that it was always going to end up going to the Supreme Court. I remember back in the summer, I too was getting as irritated as Eric Ozee was in his last video, and quite understandably so. And it was actually Eric Ozee that I spoke to, and he calmed me down. So, if I can be of help in that respect, I doubt it. I think he's quite a big fellow. I think if I was, I think I'll stay well clear of him. I don't think he's exactly overjoyed with the decisions, as I said. One thing he did ask me to do was to make reference to the Sean Atwood video, which was very, very good. I agree that there definitely needs to be a discussion over leadership of the basically us truthers. That there does need to be that discussion taking place, and yes, so that when if SCOTUS decide to hear, then maybe we don't need to take any kind of protesting. But for me, that wouldn't be unclassy. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Another video I'd like to make quick reference to, I watched last night. It was quite staggering stuff, really. Was the fog haze video, in which we managed to hear from the horse's mouth, as it were, the conversation between Steve, Barb and Scott Taddick. What I found particularly interesting is the fact that we actually got to hear that video in the first place. One would maybe have thought that that was going to be something that was going to be kept back for Making a Murderer Series 2, and somehow, somewhere, that audio has now been allowed to be heard. Personally, I think it's a good thing. It advances the cause. I think when you look back on Making a Murderer, the filmmakers, they were there for a long time, seeing what was going on, and there was a lot of stuff that Sweaty was doing in public to completely destroy any chance of Steve and Brendan's presumption of innocence. So yeah, for me, it's good that we're getting to, as I say, hear the words and the comments that go along with the video. Were also obviously very interesting. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today, because it's getting late at night, so catch you again soon. Bye for now.